Thanks again, Pertu, for your excellent introductory keynote. May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears. Now it is time for our first panel of the day, and we'll have a second one in the afternoon. And this one is titled Navigating Geo-Strategic Workforce Shifts, the Role of Vocational Education in a World of Disruptions. May I please ask the speakers to come forward and take their seats here on stage. Let me please introduce the speakers to you. I'll start from the other end from my perspective. We are joined by the head of the Policy Advice Unit at the European Training Foundation, Mr. Yorgos Zissimos. Please welcome him. Then next to him sits the founder and honorary chairman of Newsoft and the executive director of the China Center for International Economic Exchanges, Dr. Leo Jiren. I'm also delighted to be joined by the Director for Education and Skills at the OECD, Mr. Andreas Schleicher. Please join me in welcoming the Director for Jobs and Skills at the Directorate General for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion at the European Commission, Madam Manuela Galeng, sitting right on. With us is Rector of Algebra at Bernays University Zagreb and President of the Croatian Employers Association, Mr. Mislav Balkovic. And last but not least, sitting right next to me, she's a mechatronics specialist from Vienna, and she competed in Industry 4.0 at WorldSkills Lyon in 2024, earning a medal for excellence. Please join me in welcoming Nurit Davidovic. Our panel will have the following format. I'll ask 2 rounds of questions, and I thank all of the speakers in advance for keeping an eye on the time, and thank them for their patience with my time management, which is in the interest of ensuring that each one of them has a fair share of speaking time, and more importantly, that you may contribute to the discussion. And you can do so in 2 ways. We prefer the first, and that is when it is time for Q&A, you raise your hand and a microphone will reach you ASAP. If you prefer the digital way for whatever reason, then do join us on Slido. Could we please have the Slido QR code appear on the screen? You may send us your questions at any point. I have a tablet and they will be passed on to me, and I'll try to entertain as many of your inputs as I can. Speaking of Slido, in fact, we will open this discussion with a question to you. So please do scan the QR code. Let me see if it's there. It's to my right. I'll give you a second. Alternatively, you can also use the code of the conference, which is hashtag WSHRCHR conference. Now, contrary to the advice of Pertu, we will not start with the hopes, we'll start with the challenges. Let us please have Slido question number 2. This is a remark for the AV team. In 1 or 2 words at most, what is currently the greatest challenge in improving TVET in your country? Please use 1 or 2 words at most, because then we have a nice word cloud. I'll give you a few seconds and be silent to make up your mind. All right, I'll wait a few more seconds or minutes. Not minutes, seconds. There goes. It seems the F word is the largest one. Funding. Then someone is blaming the pupils. Actually, many of you. Systems, skills, alignment. Perception is quite a large one. I think it's the second largest one. Then perception again, but spelled differently. And then salary, I pick out that one. Youth interests, teachers training. Thank you very much for your input. I'm quite sure we'll be touching on most of these probably in the first question already. My first round will be as follows. I have a question which is the same to all of you, and you have limited time to answer, and this will be your introductory statement. My question is, and I'll start with you, Nurit. In the face of disruptive mega trends, what are, from your perspective, the key challenges for employers to have relevant skills in the future?
I think that a big issue is for employers to also motivate young people, because if you look in a world like that, and we heard it in the keynote, I often ask myself, with a world like this, with full of these crises, like, why even do it? Like, for what? For what go to education? For what do my bachelor? For what make the mechatronics apprenticeship? Like, why I'm doing this? When the world looks like full of crises. So I think employers have to show that the work that they offer provides social impact for the future, provides a better future, a more climate-friendly future. Also for me, when I applied at my job, I saw, okay, with my mechatronics skills, I can make it that old factories gonna be more efficient, use less energy, and be better for the future. Because otherwise, why do it? So that's the reason why I think employers need to step up and show what their impact is for their work.
Excellent. So really you are demanding from employers actually to show that the work that you're doing is valuable for the world. It's
Yes.
more than salary and a career. Excellent. Yes. I'll turn to you, Andreas, OECD. From your perspective, how can employees ensure that their skills are relevant for the future?
You know, look, nobody knows whether technology is going to create more jobs than it destroys, or the other way around. But we do know this: the twin engines of the digital and green revolution are totally rewriting the rules of work. And today, you know, and the new jobs are not just replacements; they are reinventions. I think that's the challenge. And what that means is that upskilling and reskilling, that kind of lifelong learning, is that, you know, Minister Folk said that very nicely. It's that new labor market currencies, that energy that keeps us going. And that for individuals is a challenge. You know, we used to learn to do our work, and now suddenly learning is the work. I think that's the transition. And great workplaces need to double up as great learning hubs.
So if there's one skill you need as a worker, it's the skill of learning.
Absolutely. I mean, that energy, that curiosity in that environment in which, you know, great places of work become great places of learning. And great schools are very good in anticipating tomorrow's jobs, not yesterday's. And all of that goes in favor of vocational education and training. You know, I mean, that's the interesting part. You know, it's the applied skills, the creativity, you know, the authenticity that you bring as a worker. And, you know, WorldSkills is the North Star of what vocational education can be at its best. And, you know, artificial intelligence can easily out-essay a graduate, but it can't replace that person who, you know, fixes power plant or, you know, cuts your hair. And I mean, there are lots of kind of things that are very grounded in applied expertise, adaptability, creativity, ethical decision making. Actually, I like the list that, you know, our keynote put out. And, you know, in a way, I think, as an employee, forget the notion of green skills and brown skills. You know, there are no green mechanics or brown mechanics. What there are mechanics who are very, very good in adapting very rapidly to apply their skills in new contexts. And we didn't do that particularly well during the pandemic. You know, we had lots of people with a surplus of skills in the hospitality industry, you couldn't rapidly deploy that same skill set in the house industry.
So how do you do it, Andreas?
Well, I think it's...
Personally?
Yeah, we need to become better at recognizing the skills. What we do in my organization, measuring skills, you know, the PISA for vocational education is a great way of actually finding out what those skills are, making them visible. You cannot improve what you cannot see. Yeah, so I think those are really important parts.
Excellent, thank you very much. Manuela, in 2 minutes, what is your take on this?
Well, I think, as was already highlighted, that we are living in a situation, especially in the European Union, where there are more jobs than there are actually people for these jobs. And for me, this means two things. One, we need people that have more flexibility skills, but also that are able to seize the opportunities. And I think now with the digital and green transitions, we have more, you would need to be digitally fluent, but at the same time have skills in sustainability. But you don't need them as separate skill set, you need to have them all. So you need to be flexible enough to be able to acquire these skills. Secondly, you need to be able to seize the opportunities. If we look at, for instance, two sectors that are important for the green transition, like water and waste management or electricity, we have in Europe 40% of the workforce in these two sectors that are older workers, whereas we have only 8% that are young workers. So that tells you already where the opportunities will be in the future, and this is what actually preoccupies us a lot at European level, and we are working through the Union of Skills with the Skills Observatory to actually be able to connect the dots between where are the opportunities and where are the people that could match these opportunities.
Excellent, and thanks for keeping an eye on the time. Mislav, your 2 minutes on this question. How can, from the perspective of workers, how can they ensure that their skills are relevant?
Well, I think the biggest challenge we live now is the pace of technological development, from digitalization to AI, robotics, and this huge speed actually create a lot of economical insecurity. According to UN social report for this year, 60% of workers in the world are afraid of losing their job and not being able to find a decent one later.
What is the percentage?
60.
60.
It's a huge percentage.
And this is globally?
Yeah, it's global. It's UN. So according to the same resource, the big problem which technology and the pace of the technological development is creating is the number of people who are kind of left behind. Today, 1% of wealthiest people in the world possess the same value as the rest of 95% of the poorest, meaning there is huge sense of division in the societies. These divisions create actually people who are very prone to follow those inwards looking movements. If you want populist ideas, us against migrants, us against them across the border, because it's hard to sell the idea us against technology. It doesn't work. At the end of the day, what we need to do as employers and partners to policymakers in education is to create educational systems in which we leave no one behind. Because if we do this, we'll have big problems in a way how our society is going to develop.
Mislav, someone said the greatest challenge are pupils from the input on Slido. Now you're in education, you deal with pupils, students. What do you think of them?
What we learn from year to year, from generation to generation, is that some ideas of studying, meaning that you need to invest time and effort to create results, is less attractive compared to avoiding the road and getting to the results and fast. This puts a different focus on us as educators to motivate, to find with our own kind of energy, with our own involvement, how to make more and more students willing to invest their time instead of just getting results. like different activities such as project-based didactics and others could play here a good role.
Excellent. We'll be touching on that a little more later on. I'll return to the other end of the stage. Yorgos, your take on how employers can ensure that their skills are relevant.
I think the employee now is a little bit hard to say the situation. On one hand, we say the more young people, it's very hard to get a job. Another hand, from the employee side, we are hard to get qualified people. It's a big gap, education, institute, university, with the demand of a marketplace. I think that is a big challenge. The reason is who defines the future skill? What it means skill? So I think enterprises is leading the innovation about future, invites a lot for future. They know what it means skill for the future, even some uncertainty, but still have the guideline for the future direction. But the university training organization is totally separate, not total, but many of them is separate. They have their logic, but the market have their logic. I think the future, the challenge is how to narrow the gap between training organization and the demand of a marketplace.
Joanne, can I ask you a follow-up question? If you speak to very young folks, let's actually say children of about 10 years of age, given your long experience in innovation and how you have seen China develop, what would you advise them?
I think in the future, just like speaker just mentioned that, before we learn some skill, but we learn how to thinking about use your skill or capability. So that means the people need to learn more about the creativity. I do believe like art, like music, some creativities, the knowledge is more important than some technology skill. We need people know how to cooperate with them, the teamwork, and to learn some value. So that is a basic, more than mathematics, like physics. So, but just we ask that who teaching about this? We're teaching to build a new attribute of people can face future challenge of this. So that means the people, the human being, before today, is different as the next 20 years or 30 years. What is that kind of future will be followed up by university education, even the family, the parents. So I think that is, we must face, we're talking about AI will totally disruptive the job opportunity of our education system for the future. The knowledge become a commodity. It's before knowledge is a value, but every people can easily get knowledge, very cheap price, easily, anytime, anywhere.
But creativity is the true thing that makes the difference. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yorgos, I turn to you. You've listened to the input on what workers can do to ensure that their skills are relevant. What are we missing in our discussion so far?
Well, I think the question of who defines the skills needed is a crucial one, and therefore comes the question in which context. And as an organization that we work for the European Union, but outside the European Union, the context makes a lot of difference. So are we talking for country A, country B, region, and so on? That's very, very important. The second point is that we're talking about competitiveness of skills, and these, they function in competitive economies as well. So the two, they need to go together. And we need to look at the provision of skills, and TVET does that, provides skills, within this spectrum of competitiveness, and therefore connected as a system with many other things. Can you have a good TVET system if nothing else works in the country, for example? So you need to have that. People spoke about funding earlier on the chart. So is funding the only solution? It needs to be combined with other elements. And therefore, I think this systemic approach to the provision of skills is very much needed.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Please do continue sending us your questions on Slido, and after my next and last round of questions to the speakers, we'll open the floor for your input. I'd like to turn to you, Andreas. Now, at OECD, you do a very important survey, the Program for International Assessment for Adult Competencies. What does that survey tell us about the gap between what companies need in terms of skills and what employees have to offer, and how do we close that gap?
I think the first thing that you learn from this survey is that kind of, what defines a nation's wealth today is no longer the degrees it produces, but the skills it can mobilize. What the survey shows us that there are many people who are overqualified for the jobs they do and who do not have the skills that employers actually need. And that mix has become really toxic. You pay a price for that.
Can you give us an example?
Yeah, you may have a degree, but you do not have, the innovation skills, digital skills to actually use your work effectively. And you do pay a price for this. You see that on average, people who are formally overqualified get 12% in wages less. And that's not just an economic price tag, it's a drag on innovation. It's our capacity to actually move things forward. I think that mix is quite serious. We've also, and that's sort of the troubling part of that, we've seen huge growth in degrees and qualification, but we have not seen improvement in the skills of people over the last decade since we have measured those kinds of outcomes. And I think that should give us to worry, because I think actually Professor Lieb made a really important point, who defines the skills? And actually the problem that we currently have is that we have divorced the definition of skills and actual development. Now, what we know is that, what's the secret of good vocational education training is that it actually puts the workplace and the learning space together. It's the work-based component of learning that makes vocational education and training successful, not the school-based component. Right? You try to train, teachers in schools with up-to-date skills, you always run behind the future. You always lose that game. You can no longer quickly enough retrain people. You need to bring people from the workplaces to the young people and help them, get that authentic experience at the workplace. And we're not doing enough of that. And that means that there is this growing gap between the skills that our economies need and what we actually produce. And,
what are some of the good practices to address this challenge?
Well, the best practice is really when employers become part of that equation, when employers are actually developing the skills through
co-developing curricula.
Yeah, and basically provide the trainers when, the trainers in companies have the pedagogical skills to become great teachers. Sometimes we need part-time arrangements for that. We need to be flexible in making that happen. But, the best learning is the learning that you do at the workplace. Second part is, that lifelong kind of dimension in this, and that you continue to upgrade and reinvest in your skills. And great, employers today are very, very good at that. But there's this third component that I think is also really important. Best practice is about, at the system level, having a conversation how you define those kinds of skills. What is actually needed that, employers are in the driver's seat to actually anticipating the evolution of skill demand.
From the great surveys and research that you do at OECD, is it indeed the case, as our work cloud showed, that funding is the crucial problem?
I'm not so sure about that, actually. We have seen in most countries actually quite good improvements in the resources that we invest, and there is just, huge differences in the productivity. I'm not sure it is, if you ask, for example, individuals, why don't you continue to learn? Why don't you benefit from the arrangements that exist? Number one answer is, I don't need it for my job. We still have that idea, I've got my degree,
I'm done.
My job.
Yeah.
And I think that mentality shift, is more important than funding, actually. The second part, we need to get away from these lumpy degrees and qualifications to become much more granular in how we recognize the skills. I'm a great believer in micro-credentials, Our work on the PISA for vocational education is an example. We want to build a direct currency. Can we observe the skills people actually have rather than just, how they accumulated it, where they studied for how long. And
right.
I think those kinds of instruments that create a kind of system-level conversation, we become very, very good at anticipating where is AI driving us, the green revolution driving us, and then at the same time very flexible at the front line, at the workplaces to provide those skills.
Thank you very much, Andreas. Please join us another time on Slido. For AV, this is Slido question 1. Here we're asking you to rate the advancement of TVET in your country. How do you rate the improvement of the position of TVET in your country over the past 3 years, where 1 is poor, 2 is fair, 3 is good, 4 is very good, and 5 is excellent? I'll give you a moment to make up your mind. One of the scientists on the stage is saying this is a perfect normal distribution. Indeed, that is how it looks. Brilliant. So nearly, well, actually 40% is saying it's good. So right in the middle, it's 3 stars out of 5. And 1 star and 5 stars has roughly an equal percentage. That's interesting. Thank you very much for your input. I move to you, Manuela. If you take the whole European Union in your mind, what star would you give? So how do you think has the position of TVET improved in the European Union?
Okay, well,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. How many?
Well, I think we are on the road to progress. I think since the last 5 years, since we actually have a policy framework at European level on vocational education and training, member states have embarked in reforms and will actually come forward with a report towards the end of this year and early next year that looks at what has been improved and where are the remaining gaps. A lot of funding, we saw the word funding, has actually gone in the European Union to improving vocational education and training. But at the same time, we are also now working towards a VET strategy because we see that there are fundamental issues that we need still to solve in vocational education and training. First of all, as was already highlighted, most of our labor shortages are in VET professions. If I take the 7 biggest labor shortages in the EU, 6 of these 7 are vocational. So that tells you how important vocational education and training is. But we have a problem in Europe that we are working on it, but we are still not there. It's about the attractiveness. How do you make vocational study attractive to young people and also to adults, because it's also about up and reskilling during working life. I think this is really one area where I think we need to focus a lot. Another focus that clearly for the European Union, because when I go to WorldSkills, I see this is not so much the case, that there is a lot of gender segregation. When you go to healthcare professions, it's mostly women. If you go in megatronics, that's why I'm so happy to see it here, or IT, you see mostly men, mostly young men. So we really need to change this approach towards making the professions of the future accessible to all. And the other part that is very important is making sure that skills can move across borders. So that, because nowadays it's like we don't have a single market of skills, and this is really a crucial issue for the future.
This is an issue of skills recognition across borders.
Across borders, within the EU and from outside the EU.
Now, the European Union has declared as one of its flagship initiatives the Union of Skills. In fact, I think it was in this European Commission's term the first initiative to be launched. That's how important it is. Can you tell us about it? How is it improving skills and TVET in Europe?
Yes. So, first of all, the Union of Skills is a response to that call that we need to be more competitive and we need to increase our capacity to innovate, because skills for the way our economy is built are really a key enabler for more competitiveness and for more innovation. So the Union of Skills looks at 4 areas where in Europe we need to improve. One is to make sure that everybody has the basic skills, digital skills, citizenship skills, literacy skills, and so on. That everybody has a certain level of STEM, so science, technology, engineering, mathematics skills. So this is one area, getting the foundations right in early age. Mm-hmm. Then upskilling and reskilling throughout your working life.
Lifelong learning.
Lifelong learning. Thirdly, making the possibility of skills to circulate across border. I just mentioned this. And fourth, being able to attract and retain talent, because we are not so good at attracting talent toward the EU and not so good at retaining talent. So these are the 4 areas where we will be working together with the member states, social partners, and stakeholders in going forward.
Excellent. We'll return to you. Now, you've mentioned that one of the issues, Manuela, is the attractiveness of TVET, the attractiveness of jobs that require TVET. And this is why I turn to Nurit. Nurit, please advise all us, including myself, unfortunately I'm no longer young, all us older people, how do we make it more attractive?
I think we have to change how we view TVET. Because when I was in high school, in middle school, all you always heard from teachers, oh, if you go to TVET, you're a failure. Study for your tests, study for the exam, because you want to be good at school, you want to go to university. If you don't, you land at TVET. So it was always like, that's the bad thing. You don't want to be that. And that is just wrong. Like, it's both important. It's important that with people that go to university, but it's also infrastructural, crucial that we have people who go to TVET. So this is one of the factors. If teachers tell us this is the bad thing to go,
then you will not
unattractive, then I will not go.
So that's the negative approach that we shouldn't take. What is the positive approach? How do we promote it as something good, beautiful, nice?
I think positively, there's also the funding aspect that was told here from a top-down approach. What I heard here, like funding is no problem. But for example, I was in my TVET school, and if I see cables hanging around in places where they shouldn't hang, if I see broken systems for heating and everything, I don't see that there's no funding issue. So it is more attractive if I see, this is a good school, the teacher is knowledgeable, I can trust him, he knows what he's teaching me, the school is well heated and all of the stuff. So the TVET schools need to be lucrative that I want to go there.
They shouldn't be treated as second class.
Yeah.
Can I ask you, Nurit, personally, what was your journey that took you to mechatronics?
So I went to a typical high school in Austria, where I then had my high school exam. And I also thought I want to go very typically just to university. And I thought I want to study physics. But after a couple of months, during fall 2020, I realized...
You were in university then?
Yes, I was in university.
So you did go to university,
yes,
studying physics?
For a couple of months. And then I realized this is not the right path for me. I don't like it. I have the feeling I do 4 pages of maths, but there's no output. And it didn't feel right to me. So then I dropped out of university.
Then you asked ChatGPT to do your homework?
There was no ChatGPT
at the time. Okay.
This came a year later, I think. So then I was a lot on social media at the time because a lot was online. And I opened Instagram actually, and I was like, okay, I'm getting all of this advertisement. And this advertisement is based on my online behavior of all of us. And I was thinking, what if I take this and provoke it on, for me, that the advertisement is on the side that I want to have. So I knew I like technology. I like natural sciences, but I also always like technology. So I thought, okay, I have no idea what opportunities exist. I have no possibility to go to physical fairs. Let's provoke my Instagram. And I searched for engineering, robotics. I just searched some words. And every post that came up, I, on purpose, liked it, commented it, and saved it in the hope to get advertisements.
So you trained your Instagram.
Yes, I trained my Instagram. And then I
Something I would never think of. Look at this. Okay.
Then I waited, and a couple days later, actually, all my advertisements were for all around of schools and universities and job opportunities all around the technology field.
And what's the advertisement, because I'm guessing that's where you're going, that got you?
Yeah, and then I got an advertisement by my current employer, so I work at Siemens.
Okay.
And they had an advertisement of, yeah, you can have an apprenticeship where you already get money and can make yourself independent. And in the evening, you can go to evening university and do your bachelor's. And the apprenticeship was mechatronics for automation, and the evening university was computer science. And I thought, wow, the best of both worlds. And I applied, and now I sit here.
Brilliant. What is your response? Mislav, I'd like to turn to you because you have both a say and an influence and knowledge in the system of education, as well as in the system of how employers deal with workers, etc. This sounds like a case where education and employers were working together perfectly. And as a result, they have Nurit, a champion in mechatronics. What do you think?
Well, it's very important that we work together, I mean, employers and education systems, because I mentioned already personal insecurity and big inequalities, which are nowadays driven by technological development, because adding another user to a service actually has the marginal cost of zero, meaning that there is a dark option in which we could see the world with a lot of people who are unemployable because of lack of skills, while at the same time employers are missing people to work in different disciplines. In Draghi's report, it was mentioned that more than 50% of European employers are struggling, and in some areas actually they are not able even to fulfill those vacancies that are open because of the retirement, meaning that there is no place to go further. In order to avoid this kind of a green future, what we need to do is to actually use a huge funding which all the governments are investing in education. In OECD countries, it's roughly 5% of GDP. Globally, it's less, it's 3.5%, but still, it's a huge funding in which actually, if we work together, employers and educational institutions and educational policy, we could help build more secure world for all of us. And here I think in two kind of directions. First one is where employers could influence policymakers to think about what future skills would be needed and what would be the structure of places to train young people. In terms of how we could collaborate with educational institutions per se, we need to concentrate more or less on what is being delivered, what is being taught by the teachers, then what is being assessed, and actually how we could work together as employers to more or less have young people with the right skills, and those that were mentioned in the first today's presentation, which is critical thinking, empathy, creativity, problem solving, grit, teamwork. Those are important. Very often they are being delivered unintentionally, because when you think, and I think we should think more and more in terms of systems and interoperability and kind of how different disciplines work together than in terms of disciplines and silos per se. In this sense, we could kind of instill these values and skills and knowledge in young people by trying to make them do more complex tasks, ones in which they could easily compete with technology, which is going to get even more sophisticated.
Speaking of competition with technology, how do you deal with the influence of AI on your students?
Well, it's actually, you need to teach them to use the latest tools for them to be more effective. On the other hand, in terms of assessment, you need to assess real knowledge, skills, and values rather than reading what ChatGPT and other LLMs are being kind of composed.
Are your current students as proficient at algebra as students 20 years back?
Yes,
they are
by use of technology. But then you, as a teacher, need to be aware of that and expect more. So if you have a kind of low-tech tools, then you could produce to specific level. If you use more complex tools, then it's expected of you as a student to be able to produce more. And in this sense, if you kind of are, as a teacher, aware of the opportunities brought by the technology, then you could get kind of students to get to a higher level of use of the technology, while it's important in the assessment to think about whether it's a real knowledge or it's just something being copy-pasted, and need to kind of take this into consideration.
Andreas, very briefly, when I asked that question, are they as good as 20 years back? You shaked your head. What do you mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, that's what we do see. We see actually a drop in skills, and we can actually see students who use AI for, writing an essay or doing something.
To get away with it.
When you test them afterwards, do worse than students who never used AI. So I think there's a real risk.
I'll go back to Mislav. Could you give us a concrete example of a project in Croatia where employers and education institutions work together on TVET and other technical skills?
I'll give you two.
Two, good. Yeah.
One is the recent change in curricula of 140 TVET programs, on which 500 employers from Employers Association worked together with another 2,000 experts from the educational system to create new and the latest programs, which are now implemented in all the schools starting from this year. So I think this is one which kind of...
How long did that take you, that project?
It was almost 7-year project, but most of the results were finished a year or two ago, so it's all kind of state-of-the-art for this time. The other one is one in which university in which I am employed is active. It's Center of Excellence in VET, in which together with 20 partners from Europe, we are trying to help VET teachers and schools to use AI in teaching and assessment in order to avoid the situation in which actually you have the great written papers done by ChatGPTs, but with a lack of real knowledge and understanding and curiosity and all the elements of the valuable knowledge within the students.
Jiran, I'd like to turn to you, and I thank you for your patience. Now, China, as we all know, has witnessed one of the most impressive revolutions in technological advance, productivity, and skills that were required for that. China is also often considered as a country that is very agile in adapting to new technologies and changing skills accordingly. How does China deal with the challenges that we have discussed?
I think that China is lucky because in past 30 years or 40 years, we built excellent information infrastructure in China. They cover everywhere, very high speed, the data transformation, and also computing power that make every people now connect together. So that means connectivity is become, I think China become, I think in worldwide, the population base, we have a big size of connectivity. Not only people and also all the devices, from a car, all small electronics, that collect a lot of data. The AI is based on data. When you have a huge amount of data, you have a powerful computing infrastructure that gives you opportunity you can very fast to develop AI technology. So I think that is
an important condition in terms of infrastructure.
Secondly, you're talking about 3 years, the past 3 years. Chinese government make every 5 years. They make a plan, 5 years plan, every five years. They gave very clear guideline to all the university what kind of people is needed in next 5 years. From now, this year, we're starting to make another 5 years. So that means they gave, not exactly, but gave a guideline, like each of university, they can design their contents, curriculum, their major. For example, last year, most of university closed their major about construction because China not, the property, the business is not so good. And many of those kind of business is disappeared. So university don't recruit anymore about those kind of people. But more and more for AI, for data, for healthcare technology. So that is a future business, especially when we meet a challenge about aging society. Now more and more university to studying the major about senior care technology, and the information technology, special medical informatics. So that is a deal.
How do you stimulate employers as well as government in China, students to take up technical education and training?
I think China may be a little bit different. Young people now, we call a gig economy employee. So that means most of young people, less and less, got a fixed job. They like to work in platform. The first dream is not join some big company. The first dream is to become entrepreneurs. They have their own company. Before, that kind of dream is very hard to carry out. But today, become easier and easier because information platform get higher and higher. Single people, they can do a lot of work. When I started in the company, I need 100, 200 people. But now single people can use the AI platform, to finish a job, few hundred people can finish it. So that is a big difference. So that make like a Newsoft. We have 3 universities. We have a training program we call solo student office, venture office. So like students starting their own startup, their own company, have their entrepreneurship, the journey from study in campus of university. So that gave young people more and more opportunity, especially liking to learn more how to start up the company at a different scale.
My final question, and thank you for being brief. You have founded Newsoft, a technology company. What is one good practice that you want to share with us, that you have applied in the field of skills?
I think it's integration about university and the business. I was a professor of Northeastern University. When I founded this company, I was a professor. I, together with another 2 young teachers, first all our employees from a few hundred, all is students from Northeastern University. After that, we got a few thousand students, they also from other universities. We are very much benefit those kind of integration. So the first thing, we can input our content demand and the visionary about the future technology to university. Secondly, we can got many of talent to serve our business.
Excellent. This will be my last question, and to Yorgos. After that, I'm very curious to hear from you, and I encourage you to raise your hand and contribute your thoughts. Yorgos, of ETF. Now, you work in potential members of the European Union, as well as the neighborhood of the European Union. Can you, from your experience, shed a light on how to encourage youth to take up the skills that we require for our new economies?
Thank you. Yeah, I think it goes along with the comment on attractiveness of VET and upskilling, reskilling. And I think attractiveness of VET is not new. It's been bothering policymakers in particular for the last few decades. I think what is different now is that it's very much pressing, and because it's linked with the notion of competitiveness, and of course you need the skills at the heart of that, and you need the VET systems to provide those. So I think there's a more pressure to deliver that. Champions like Nurit, of course, they help. They show the way. They show what is possible. The tricks that you mentioned, I think this is very, very useful. Competitions, they play an important role. Strategies. I mean, we heard about strategies at the European level, the Union of Skills. We had a 5-year strategy in China. They show a continuum. They show a clear sort of orientation where we want to go and how we can make them the best out of that. Let me give a figure here that is part of our studies. This continuation of policies is fundamental. So you need to have a strategy, and you need to aim to have an impact with that strategy. Now, at European level, the last 20 years we have changed more or less 300 ministers of education.
Over the past 20 years?
The past 20 years.
We've changed 300 ministers across the EU.
27 countries, around 300 ministers. It says something
It's called democracy, no?
It says something about the continuation, though. So if you look at the follow-up of policies, and how many of those policies that have been launched have actually continued and saw an end and an impact, you can see that the change, of course, has an impact. So I think these are issues that we need to be a bit more cautious when we design, when we deliver policies. So attractiveness of VET is linked with the attractiveness of
I'm very happy you're talking about the system, continuation, etc. There's an issue with that, and that is disruption. Technology goes so fast, it's very hard for policymakers to keep up the speed. How do we deal with that? Because we need to be agile, that's the whole point. Well,
for policymakers, for the whole ecosystem in VET, I think we agreed that is a mega trend, the digitalization, the introduction of new technologies, artificial intelligence and so on. For teachers as well. I mean, we haven't discussed much about teachers, but they need to be part of this ecosystem. Skills
they also need to be agile in what they teach.
Of course, but if you lack in digital skills, then the possibility is that the future teachers, they see that's a threat. So it's difficult to attract into the profession. We have shortages of teachers nowadays.
But are there mechanisms that you're aware of decision taking on a systems level that help us become more agile in response to technological change, geopolitical change in our teaching and training system?
I think the connection of policies is fundamental. So you don't have one portfolio and that's done in a vertical way. You need to connect it. So
no silos.
That's very clear. I think you need models as well, and it was mentioned in Croatia here, the model of Centers of Vocational Excellence.
Right.
This is a very promising model. It is perhaps the evolution of VET at the end of the day, and it seeks a different role for teachers and trainers, and we need to look at these models.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jorgo, so far. We now open the floor for your input. Maybe we add a little light to the room, if that's possible. And raise your hand if you have a question or comment at this point, which is greatly encouraged and appreciated. Keep your hands up so I can see them. Brilliant. There is one there. Maybe you can introduce yourself first.
Hi, I'm Shweta. I'm also part of the Champions Trust like Nurit.
I think the mic is not on yet. Could that be the case? Try again. Now it is.
Hi, I'm Shweta. I'm also part of the Champions Trust like Nurit. So we just spoke about how we don't have enough teachers, and maybe the teachers are not equipped as well with future skills. And in an ideal world, I would imagine that people working in the industry, they're learning at a fast pace because the industry forces you to learn. In an ideal world, I would expect people working and simultaneously teaching. Like having that system in place would be the ideal world. So can we make that happen?
Very nice. We've already indeed touched on learning and working, but why not teaching and working simultaneously? Excellent. Thank you very much. More questions from the room. Please raise your hand. including in the back, by the way, where all the naughty pupils sit.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yes. I'm Oliver from the German Federal Ministry of Education. It is very interesting to listen to you, and I think it's a mind-opening discussion. Question to you is, we talk about creativity, social skills. Are these skills that we can use to integrate all of our youth? Vocational training has a very big social integrative role. So we don't want to leave anyone behind. There's a different narrative in the academic sector. Vocational training promises to take everyone on board. How do you think that AI works for the least gifted in the system? And how do we take them on board? Because we don't want anyone behind. Thank you.
How not to leave anyone behind. Excellent. More questions from the room? Yes, sir.
Hi, I am Mihle. I'm also part of the Champions Trust. My question will go to Ms. Manuela. At the start of the conversation, you mentioned that there is too many jobs and less people for the jobs. So my question will be, there are so many people, skilled young people, sitting at home with qualifications that do not have jobs. Where are those jobs and how do they get access to those jobs that you mentioned? Thank you.
I'll take one more. I think there's, 2 rows to the back.
Juraj, Slovakia. I would like to address the attractiveness of that from other point of view. When we speak about the mismatch in the market, we often speak about the overqualification and make a difference between vertical and horizontal. I'm afraid that vertical overqualifications are the future. I do not see it as something wrong. Simply, we could be overqualified in terms of higher level of education, but what's important whether we meet the job. So how do you feel about the overqualification? Is it real or not?
Thank you very much. So the question is, what do you make of people being overqualified given their degrees, but not necessarily having the skills to do the job? That seems to be the question. Thank you very much. I'll take a question from the online audience, and then I'll take 2 responses from the panel returning to the room. Here's an interesting one that dovetails with the question that Oliver was asking. Could you please also touch on the gender dimension in not leaving anyone behind in technical and vocational education and jobs? Perhaps I give the floor to Nurit.
Yes, thank you.
I saw you touching the microphone. So.
I could talk long, but I won't. So the other questions have space. So I want to highlight on 2 points. The one is with talking about gender, and we're talking a lot of AI, and it also combines with not leaving anybody behind. It's also important to look at who is training the AI model and what it is being trained with. I actually saw the issue while I actually wanted to see, can ChatGPT or other models can make an image of a cartoon of a mechatronic woman that looks like me. And it wasn't possible. I tried again and again and again, and it never took somebody who's like a not overly thin as a woman, or not somebody who just not look with me. And when I said, yes, please, short hair, it automatically made a man. So it's like, it's an issue with how this AI is trained. And right now it is leaving people behind. So we also have to look like who is training these models and what are they trained with. That's the one thing. But also, I think it's a great honor for me to sit right now here to also maybe show in your countries that women or all genders can participate in all skills. And that I can be a mechatronic, I could have been a mechanic, I could have been an electrician, like all of this we can do. And I actually had a talk yesterday I think, with somebody from Austria, and He mentioned like if more women would be in the technology field, we would very quickly have no workforce issue. So I think I agree with that a lot. So if you motivate women to go in these fields, there is no workforce issue.
Excellent. Thank you very much for these excellent points. Islam.
Maybe if I may add a bit how not to leave anyone behind in the debate. There are two things, I think. One is at the educational policy level where we need to plan and adjust really fast. Maybe 5 or 10 years would be not fast enough. On the other hand, what is easy to teach is easy to automate. So the teachers will need to learn a few new tricks and a few new areas in order to be able to instill in young people in that high level of skills, because middle level or low level of skills will be automated fast, not necessarily a low level of qualifications. So this means that we need really to think about the content that we teach, and in order to do it, we'll need teachers to also adjust fast. So the teachers, I think, are here the key to have the pace. And one other question: what happens if there are people with qualifications and without the right skills? Well, it's a false promise. It's a promise that is given to someone that he or she will have a good career and a good life and a good position in the labor market. And if something like this happens, it's our responsibility, both as educators or as educational policy makers, not to have this kind of wrong promises, because they cost a lot, both to the taxpayers, but also to the people who invested a lot of their effort and time in their lives to get to something which actually gives them not a good choice in the future.
Right. Andreas, briefly, please.
Yeah, I want to come back on this question of teachers. I think you raised a really, really important point. The good answer to this is that actually it exists. If you go to countries like Switzerland, like Germany, like Denmark, you will actually find a lot of people from industry being the teachers of the next generation. And
Jireng is sitting next to you.
Pardon?
Jireng, you were a professor and you were an entrepreneur simultaneously.
Sorry.
It was just to point out that one of them is sitting next to you. Then I'll give the floor to Jireng.
Absolutely, but it is far too rare. I mean, that's the problem, that we have still too many people in the vocational schools who are out of date in their expertise because they haven't worked at the workplace, and we have too few people in the workplace who can arrange it with their work. Your best electricians want to be electricians, not teachers. So you need to give them part-time contracts. You need to have shared contracts and all of those kinds of arrangements. And I think Nurit made a really valid point. We need also high-quality training facilities. And yet, the United States spends 10 times per student than Vietnam, and Vietnam has better results. So money alone, if I had more money, I wouldn't build a nice, beautiful vet school. I would build actually shared training facilities so that companies, small and medium-sized companies, could actually work together to train the next generation. I would invest in, allowing companies to share their apprentices. If you are a small company, you can't afford it, work with someone else. I think there's so many ways in which resources could be deployed so much more productively. But I do think, getting the people who do the work to become the teachers is the absolute key. The faster our economies move forward, the more this will become a necessity. The more updated people who are just teachers will become.
Thank you very much. I saw a few hands go up on this side of the room, so maybe we go to the back this time. Keep your hands up, please, in the back. Yes. We'll take the question from the right first, then the question from the left, and then I'll move to the front again. Yes, sir, and thanks for keeping it brief.
Thank you. My name is Georgiou Konstantinos. I'm coming from Cyprus. I'm the Chief Inspector of Vocational Education, and I'm the Head of Entrepreneurship of the Ministry. My question goes to all the speakers. How can TVET systems evolve to prepare young people for jobs that don't yet exist, especially in the era of automation and artificial intelligence? Thank you.
Excellent question. Then in the back to the left, can you put your hand up again, please? Sir or madam, I cannot see from here.
Hello, Ivan Štedl. I am from Karlovac, University of Life Sciences. Most our study programs are in STEM field, but 2 study programs are not. However, students choose in much more our non-STEM programs. So my question is, what do you believe are the most effectiveness strategies to inspire students to engage with STEM, especially with the context of vocational education?
Very good. I think there's a question here in the front. And as she moves forwards, please give the mic runner a big applause for helping us out.
Yes, my name is Michael Fong. I'm a board member of the WorldSkills International and also the co-chair of the competition committee. And I would like to ask a question because it is always a dilemma, the policymaker, the educator, because it seems that we are just in a marathon race of skill. Whether you are leading the trend, in between the trend, or following the trend. So I just want to ask the educator and those on stage, how should we deal with this? We talk about AI, is it leading a trend or otherwise? Or in the case of marathon, it's very interesting. Those who are leading, ultimately they lose. And those are in between, and they suddenly, with the capacity build up, and then they win. So I just want the educator here to analyze how you're going to deal with this and how we are going to win in the marathon race of skill. Thank you.
Very much. Excellent question. I'll add a question from Slido. I'll just read it. How do you look at peace building as part of TVET soft skills required, building our future? Is peace secured when we talk about system approach for TVET? Sounds like an additional layer of skills, perhaps. To whom can I give the floor first to give a few responses? Maybe we start with someone who didn't speak yet. Manuela?
You would like me to address this, the last round or the first round as well?
Anyone you like, but not all of them.
Okay, so is an overqualification a penalty or not? If you work, you are overqualified for your job? Yes, I think so. I think it's a penalty for the person because the person could earn more. It's a loss for society because you have someone that doesn't work at the full of its potential, and it's a loss for the economy because the person could do much more than it actually can do. So I really think we need to look at the reasons for overqualification. They may be different. We mentioned some, not recognition of the qualification, not acceptance of the skills. So I think this is also a call for employers to be more open to recognizing the skills of the people, not through administrative procedures, but rather looking, can the person do the job that I need the person to do. But we are also looking at European level we will come forward with the skills portability initiative precisely to look at these aspects. Right. I think there was a question addressed to me. There are more jobs than people, but why are still people not in jobs? And I think overqualification might be one of the answers. Other answers are that you may have been dropping out of school, so not have a qualification. So it's much more difficult to enter the labor market. You don't have your skills recognized. And I think if we look at Europe, for instance, there are 8 million young people that are not in education and in training or in employment. So this is something really, really important.
These 80 million, that's in Europe?
8 million in Europe, in the EU. And we have 32 million women that are not in the labor market. So, we have a target to reach 78% of employment rate by 2030. We are almost there. And this is excellent. But that means that we have 22% that are not working, that are in the age of working but are not working. So really the question to all the policymakers is how can we make sure that we provide more opportunities to people to use the full potential on the labor market.
Including, very importantly, women. Yorgos.
Yeah, thank you. I want to comment on the point of the skills marathon, which was raised. I'm not sure I agree with the term marathon as such. I mean, I run marathons, and at the end of the marathon, at the 42 kilometers, you reach the end. In this case, it's endless. It keeps going, and that's why I like the term of the skills ecosystem, where all the different elements need to be connected in an organic way. The cooperation with the business side, the upgrade, support, training of teachers and trainers, the cooperation with municipalities, leave no one behind, for example. I think all those with universities, with innovation systems, they need to be connected, and that's what I would describe as a skills ecosystem, and I think that's the solution to cope with the trends. And on that, let me say that, we're focusing now on artificial intelligence as a major trend, but of course there are more. And maybe one trend that we didn't discuss today is fragility. And I think there was a report last year that 2024 was the year since the Second World War with the highest number of conflicts, state-based conflicts. That has a huge effect on skills, and I think this is something that we need, apart from all the devastating results, and I think that is something we need to take into account. It's becoming, unfortunately, a trend.
So peace skills, quote unquote, is part of soft skills in TVET.
Absolutely, yes. And if peace skills to prevent conflicts is absolutely needed, but of course skills where conflicts strike and you're talking about reconstruction of the whole country, it's fundamental. If you look at just Ukraine, I was looking at the figures yesterday, that by 2032, 8.6 million of workers will be needed.
Duran, can I give you the floor to respond to the question, how do we prepare for the jobs that aren't there yet, that we don't even know how they look like?
I think firstly, I try to answer the question is, who is future's teachers? I think it's very important.
That's key, yeah.
And before we're talking about teachers from university, training institute, but today at least we can say, of course, professor, teacher, still teacher, but the most or half of them need to be the new student to learn about new knowledge or new skill to deliver their curriculum for the future. Secondly, AI-enabled internet infrastructure become much more powerful education, new infrastructure. That the power will be replaced. I think at least half of the teacher's job, which is delivered before by normal teacher, but the student can use a platform, learn easily, and anytime, anywhere. So very active, very efficiency, that is a big change. And second issue is, what is the student choice in the future? I think firstly, fundamental education is very, very important. Mathematics, physics, chemical, those kind of things is a key, is an issue. Everything is based on about the basic knowledge. Secondly, is a soft skill. Soft skill is not easy to deliver. It's very much individual. If we're talking about job opportunity, I don't think we can give a kind of standard like every people to train him to get the same kind of job. If you look at when the people got a good job, it's because they like those kind of job. They can match the personal attribute, exactly match the demand of those kind of job. That is, I think, is a transformation of our education systems.
Thank you very much. Mislav, briefly, your final thoughts.
Maybe on how you teach for jobs that are not even here yet. Maybe I think we need to be very agile. We need to meticulously plan on the basement and the foundations to see what are the real needed universal knowledge Then we design for the roof and for the balconies later and build them at the end of the initial education by using modular approach. And then we supplement through life with micro-credentials. More or less, I don't think that the ideas we used to use 20 years ago would work anymore.
Excellent, thank you very much. Nurit, you have inspired us before. I'll give you 30 seconds more of inspiring us.
Thank you. I actually really want to answer on the STEM question. And my final thought is, we were talking about creativity, and what is more creative than to create? So in STEM, you write a lines of codes and you create a website. You build something with your hand and you have a structure. Like, it's so creative, and to be more attractive, STEM to be more attractive, we have to show how creative it is. STEM is to create, STEM is creative.
Thank you very much. Now, before we thank the panelists for their excellent contributions, there is some not very creative stuff that I need to share with you, and it's about housekeeping. After the coffee break, which will last up until 11:45, we have breakout sessions. Your breakout is on your badge. There are 3 breakouts. They are numbered 1, 2, 3. Number 1 takes place right here. Number 2 is next door. And number 3 is a 5-minute walk through the park outside to Hotel President. If the lunch option is in your package, then lunch will be served here at 1 o'clock in this hotel. And we ask all of you to be back in the room at 2:15. We have an excellent session there, followed by another panel. And the session is titled Be the Change Maker, where young people who have gone through an accelerator program will present their excellent ideas about innovation, entrepreneurship, all the things that we have talked about. And now, before you leave the room for your coffee, please do join me in thanking Yorgos, Andreas, Jiren, Mislav, Nurit, and Manuela.